Today on the Couch we're covering how involved should the government be when it comes to AI, which entry level roles are disappearing, and which AI platforms you can trust with your data.
So this week in the news, Anthropic versus Trump escalates into a lawsuit. So Anthropic has now sued the Trump administration after clashing over pressure to allow government use of its models for surveillance and military purposes. This comes while other vendors like OpenAI are leaning into federal and defense work, turning AI ethics into a literal courtroom battle. So what do you think about this?
I think it's interesting. I really do. Because the government is always sticking their nose in everything. And I do think that Anthropic has the right to refuse.
Oh, I agree
Yeah.
100%. I mean, it's really I don't even think it's about Anthropic specifically. It's really about who gets to decide who keeps the AI output. Once you put data in, who
Mm.
owns that output?
Yeah, and this actually happened before. There have been some other cases of that. There was a case with Apple with the FBI asking them to unlock a phone so
Right.
they can get someone's data, and Apple didn't do it. And so it's the similar case here that, does the government have the right to overstep and basically use AI as like another means of getting people's information? And what I find interesting is that do you remember the whole 23andMe
Ooh,
thing that
yes.
everybody was doing? And then, it kind of got a bad rap because the government was then using
Able
that
to lean into
DNA
that information, yes.
and solving cold cases based on like someone in your family was involved in this
Mhm.
crime. And so it's almost very similar. It's a slippery slope for AI to have to deal with that. Not something I saw coming.
Yeah, and that's why I say it's really beyond Anthropic. It really goes back to ethics. I mean, the examples you just show, kind of outside of AI, when you think about Apple and iPhone and government being able to, tap into, text. But I think for our purposes, I like to say that, regardless of what side from a political standpoint that you're under, wherever you land, it does raise questions. When you think about, as an employee, what if this rolls over into your
Mm.
workplace?
Like the government can get your workplace AI outputs.
I mean that, or if you're in a position where, if your company is in this political battle, like what's your responsibility as an employee? If you're asked to do something from an AI project that maybe you're not
Mm.
comfortable with.
It's sticky. It's a very sticky situation. And I was wondering, what are the different, how could this play out, right? And one of the ways it can play out is that it can hit their bottom line because some of their competitors, like OpenAI, are actually embracing,
Mhm.
working with the government. And they're saying that that's going to lead to government contracts and additional sources of revenue. So Anthropic may be cutting themselves off there. But when I went out to see what is Anthropic doing in terms of revenue, they are slated to make between 19 and $50 billion in 2026.
Mhm.
And just to give you some, comparison of how much that is, Tesla is doing 97 billion, Apple's doing 400 billion, and Amazon is doing 650 billion. So it's still a pretty small company, but it's big enough where cutting off the government as a source of
Mhm.
income may be okay.
Yeah, you raise a few different points. I mean, it's really interesting because when you think about OpenAI and you think about Anthropic, you essentially right now in terms of the AI space, you have two of the titans. And they are taking polar opposite
Mhm.
directions. So Anthropic is leaning in as, the AI responsibility, the good
Mhm.
ethics of
Right.
AI. And you're right. In terms long term, is that gamble going to pay off for them? They're more of the safe AI. I was reading some of those same numbers you were talking about and how this play could in the long run harm Anthropic because
Mhm.
essentially what they're doing by not taking the government contract, they've essentially given their competitor access to
Yeah.
so essentially their competitor will be getting the billions, and we're talking billions in defense contract revenue. And so for Anthropic, I think where they're going to take a spin in that
Mm,
safe AI branding, I think what that does for companies that look at, say, look at
okay.
Anthropic as the safe AI, they're going to maybe lean into Anthropic more.
So you're saying they are sacrificing
There's
government for the private
more,
industry,
yes, for private
revenue.
sector revenue with that safe AI branding. So, I think it's definitely, a gamble for them and, in the long term, but we'll see if it pays off.
So with the battle, the AI battle going on, when Anthropic dropped the Super Bowl, not
Which were
videos,
hilarious.
but the Super Bowl ads, basically comparing themselves to the other AI giants. Do you think that it's possible that they are going against the government as a PR stunt to really cement how much they care about ethics and everything like that?
Yes, that's a gamble I think that they're taking. I mean, they're essentially, in my opinion, hanging their hat on the good, ethics of AI. They wanna be known as the safe AI. And so with that, I think, it is a gamble, for them, and hopefully it'll pay off in the private sector.
Our next story is actually about Anthropic as well. There's been some new data on the real job impacts that AI is having on private industry, all jobs everywhere. And Anthropic released research introducing a new measure of AI's exposure and finds that programmers, customer service reps, and financial analysts are among the most exposed. But so far, no clear effect on unemployment rates. However, there's tentative evidence that hiring into these professions for ages 22 to 25 is slowing, which lines up with the entry level squeeze that everyone has been feeling. What do you think about that?
So it's a little startling. I mean,
Mm,
because like they're saying, it's not necessarily hitting the numbers. There's no flashing lights to say that these numbers are hitting unemployment, but it's startling because you think as a new graduate, those entry level roles, when you kind of think of like starting in the mailroom and working your way up, you're now competing with the AI subscription, like a corporate AI subscription.
mm.
Like those roles don't exist to some degree. If you have a senior professional where before they were supported by maybe 5 junior staff members, that may not be the case anymore. They're gonna just use AI for those roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, I think it really should set off some alarm bells for anyone who is coming out of college, can't find a job. It means that you need to pivot immediately because the reason you're not seeing anything in the unemployment data makes complete sense, right? They were never hired.
Mhm,
So not gonna be any data about these people being let go.
mhm.
However, if you're slow to find a job and you can't find these entry level roles anymore, it is a signal that the role may be phasing out long term, right? If you're in the role, you may have several years before it impacts you, but you should have your antenna up. I guess, like, if you're at a company and you're in a role and you start to realize that we're not hiring any juniors, we're not, bringing on interns, we're not doing anything like that, then you kinda need to start looking like, what's the future of my role?
Yeah, I would agree. A few things there. I mean, I think it's crippling and it's really unfortunate for those new grads because it's just the absence of opportunity,
Mhm.
in terms of being able to enter a company entry level and work your way up. I do think the other thing for individuals, going into college, looking at careers, it's not enough just to say, don't go into the tech field right now or
Mhm.
anything like that. I think it's more about for an individual and even coming out of college at this point, because you can't outrun AI exposure at this point.
Right.
So it's more about asking, am I building skills that will
Mhm.
position me to work with AI? If you are that younger individual and you're fortunate enough that you're in an organization or you do get in, I think, being able to leverage your AI skills and to teach your older coworkers. And then if you're trying to get into if you're a new graduate, again, where are you building skills to be able to work with AI?
Yeah, I mean, my overall thought is that you have to build your own body of work now. You used
Mhm.
to graduate school, you have an internship lined up, you have this entry level role. That was basically how you built your body of work and how you made your mark as a corporate employee. But I actually think there's an opportunity here as well. You can create projects, you can do the entire job with AI, and you can have a portfolio, and quite honestly, if it was me, I wouldn't be going for entry level roles. I would build a portfolio. I would have my own internship, contact any business owners that you know, start giving out your services pro bono, and I would go into the job interview saying I have 2 years of experience, like, straight up. That's what I would be doing because you do, right? If you've built your body
Mhm.
of work, outside of the traditional method, you should still get credit for that, and if you know what you're talking about, they'll hire you. So I do think junior roles and entry level is just going to look different. It is gonna be people who actually have some experience. Maybe there's nonprofits, you can go to universities and get some experience. I just think everybody's gonna have to get really scrappy about how they create their resume.
I agree. Around the holidays, that's when all the family got together. We were having these conversations with our college bound family members. And, that was just a few months ago. But having that conversation today, what I would be saying the same thing, build something tangible, building builds confidence, it
Mhm.
builds experience, it builds that body of work that you
Mhm.
talked about that you can take to an employer. So I think for anyone right now, if you're in between positions, you're out of work, you're trying to level up, the way to do it would be to build right now, to get all in and, in your current role, begin to audit your work, look at your daily routine, figure out which of those tasks are granular tasks. Is this something that AI could be doing and become that expert within your role? Again, if you're
Yeah.
not working, begin to look at you like you said, those industries where they could benefit from someone reaching out like a nonprofit,
Mhm.
um, and providing them with a service.
Small business in your area, I mean, you gotta do something. I think what has changed is companies no longer have the patience to literally take a person who knows nothing, right? Entry level, you're trying to figure out email, you're trying to figure out inner office communications. Like, there are just so many things that they have to get you up to speed on. And I do think that responsibility is gonna be shifting back toward the individual now.
Yeah, and we've said this before right now. I mean, the data suggests it's ironic, but the data suggests that employers are not training employees on AI, but they
Mhm.
want to see results from AI. So the best way to get training right now is in building, leaning all in.
And I wanna put us out there and say that if you are a new college grad and you are looking for a way to get some experience, leave us a comment below. If you are a parent, if you know anybody who has graduated and they don't have a job, leave us a comment. We're a small business. We need admin support. We need editors. We need graphic designers. And so I would be more than happy, to be somebody's first notch on their resume. So,
Reach out.
yeah, I think that wraps up the news for this week. So, what you got going on this week, cousin, in terms of what you're building with AI?
I've been lifing.
Okay.
So, there's always parenting duties and things. So for me, in terms of AI this week, it was personal. I've been working on a homework helper. I think I've mentioned that, like the areas where I think I can gain efficiency, has been around homework. So I actually stumbled on to something the last few weeks. So typically my daughter gets a weekly agenda of vocabulary words, spelling tests, and things like that, and
Mhm.
I prefer to sit with her side by side to go through those. But there's always a pocket of time between when she gets out of school and when I'm available to wrap up my day to sit with her. And so,
Mhm.
my thing has been in between that hour, what could she be working on, in terms of self study?
Yeah,
And
independent.
so, yeah, independently. And so, in terms of a demo this week, so I actually took her agenda, the week's agenda, I actually put it into Gemini and presented Gemini with the agenda. So, this week we're working on geography. We're learning states and capitals. We have our weekly spelling words. And so, Gemini was actually able to put together a study sheet. And this wasn't just a regular PDF, because that's what I've been doing for the last year in ChatGPT, creating a,
Okay.
a study sheet that I would print out and she would work on. And so I went into Gemini. I didn't ask for anything other than help her study this week, provided the agenda. It provided a interactive test for the states with the hint. So it was
Oh,
able
okay.
yeah, so it was able to indicate, where Texas was located in, near Oklahoma. Um, so in terms of did it actually work? Yes. For her spelling words, there's a voice option. So she's able to recite them back and forth. It was able to respond in voice mode if she missed any of the spelling. I would say ease of use. It was really simple. Impact of the week was a game changer. I think as parents, being able to leverage AI where it's a helper and
Mhm.
not a cheater is critical. And that's what this was about. Like
Okay.
for me, it was an eye opener being able to help her without providing her, with the answer and give her correction.
Okay, so it basically created like a quiz
It
without you having to build an application,
Without
but
me having to build an application, literally just giving it the spelling words for the week.
yeah.
It created a quiz with a hint, so if she was having trouble, and then it actually created flashcards, which was great for the spelling words, and she's on her tablet, as most kids are, so on her tablet, she's just able to click the flash words, say the word, and then it clicks, and then it flips over.
Okay, and so how what's the connection? Like, is there a link you can share? How does she access that on her tablet?
So I created on my tablet, there is a link. So I'm actually able to share the link
Okay.
with her on her tablet and she can retake the test over and over. And so I can actually share it to because it's via a link, I'm actually to share that with other parents in her class.
Oh, I love that. So we think Gemini is winning for,
Right now, Gemini is winning as a homework helper. I think that other platforms can do the same, but I was really impressed with Gemini.
love that.
And last plug I'll say about Gemini, I think there's an opportunity to build on it because a lot of the schools use the Google suite of
Okay.
products. Her class, they use Google Chrome. So that's why I'm
Mm,
partially biased to Gemini for homework right now.
sounds like a winner.
So what are you working on in the lab?
This week, the pain for me has been staying on top of action items at work.
Mhm.
Because in my job, not only do I have to, you know, complete and manage my own action items, I have to manage those of others as well.
Mhm.
And that's kind of where I was dropping the ball a little bit. Uh, I'm in a role where I'm in meetings all day. And if you've been in a role like that before, you understand that by the end of the day, you've sat in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 meetings and at least everyone is taking notes, right? We have our AI note
Mhm.
takers, but who's gonna go through all those 8, pages of notes to get your action items? That's where my pain was. I was like, "I'm not going through all of those meetings to see what was mine." It just seemed like wasted effort, so I set out to build an agent that could automatically every day send me my action items and those of others that I need to track. Basically, I have a running database of action items because I work best in a table form.
Mhm.
And so basically, I have my action items coming into Airtable, and then they're all there for me, and I can just tick, 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 tick. Versus reading through transcripts, looking at meeting summaries. I'm not doing any of that anymore. So this is something that I build with my Mac Mini. So it is a custom agent that I'm running locally Uh, I wanna say super easy to build, but I really wanna kinda give it like a 3 out of 5, right? It's very easy to build, but you do have to leave time for troubleshooting
Mhm.
because you're dealing with multiple systems. There is a little bit of back and forth, but I would say it's pretty easy. Definitely a game changer for how I get my work done. All I do is I get an email every day telling me these are action items you need to focus on.
From the prior day.
Well, no, because it's tracking them continuously.
Mhm.
And so it could be an action item from last week that I didn't do. And
Oh,
so it's keeping me on task, like, and prioritizing. So just because an action item came yesterday, it's starting to learn and understand what does Jerry need to do when.
mhm.
So 10 out of 10 would recommend. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to go back to manually reading anything and figuring out what I need to do from it. I think the good with building it like, internal, it's my own personal app, is that it's only costing me pennies to run, right? If I try to do something like that with Zapier, I would be at the highest level of plan possible just because all of my meetings are going there. It's a lot of data. So I think that's the best part about building your own agents and running them locally is that it costs basically nothing to run. I looked at my Anthropic billing. I just got a bill. I had only put $5 in my account
Mhm.
and it lasted about 6 weeks. $5.
Okay. 6
So I
weeks.
mean, even compare that to your other AI subscriptions, right? So it costs nothing to run. I think the worst part is that after my meeting, I have to click one button to let the system know that I'm ready to get the action items. And it also lets me decide, do I care about everybody's action items or do I only care about my own? So that's just the one little thing that I have to do after every meeting, and I'll take it all day.
Okay, because what I'm hearing from this at the end of the day, it's one thing to leverage. I mean, we all enjoy getting the meeting minutes and having the action items, but if
We
you
don't enjoy getting the meeting minutes. Like,
well,
let's be
well,
real.
we enjoy that we don't have to take the meeting
Yes.
minutes, yes, but
Yes.
getting them, yes, you're absolutely right, and then if you're in, 4 to 5 meetings a day, you have 4 to 5 different buckets of action items, and so
Mhm.
with your agent, all of those action items are all together. I think that
Yes.
I mean, there's so many advantages there in terms of time savings and,
I mean,
just
it's shutting down the game because I don't have to comb through pages of notes. I can literally go to my table, I can see the meeting from last week and immediately recall everything right there in a table form. Like, this is what we were supposed to do, this is what has happened since then, and it's just for ease of use. I just think even in the age of AI, we have so much data now.
mhm.
Now we need help managing our data.
Yeah, that's gonna be a whole 'nother discussion,
Yeah.
data overkill. So, truly some gems there, and I think the great thing about this for those who are interested in wanting to know more about how Jerry's able to leverage those meeting notes and those action items is that that will be included in the show notes.
Yeah, in the description, we'll have our AI simple action plan that we attach for every single episode, and then the other gem is that I actually recorded that entire demo, so you'll be able to access both. You'll see my full setup, and then you can have some action items that you can take forward and start building for yourself.
That's great. Alright.
So this week in my LinkedIn DMs, I actually had a conversation going with someone I know from college, and she said AI is useful, but at least a bit scary for me because I'm still trying to figure out which platform to trust depending on what I'm doing and which I can trust for everyday use. So trust is such a big topic when it comes to AI. What do you think?
I mean, I can understand the question. I mean, scary isn't irrational in this day and age. Trust is paramount. I think in terms of trust, for me, I think of it in terms of like two categories when I think
Hmm.
about my data and I think about AI. For me, the first category is stuff I'd be comfortable with saying in a coffee shop. So category one is the kind of coffee shop conversation. So general questions, public info, something again I'd be comfortable with chatting about in the coffee shop. If someone overheard it, it's not the end of the world. So that's category one when I think about AI. So things like that, you can use any
Okay.
platform, any tier for those coffee shop conversations. Category 2 would be, anything that first has a name attached to it, whether it's a client name, an employer name, um, my name. So those things, I'm hesitant about. Anything that's real life business decision, financial, legal details, anything that it would be a problem if it became public. I think that second category, some things to consider from a work perspective, that's when you want to look at the enterprise account, or what does
Mhm.
your employer endorse? Well, where have they, where do they sign off in terms of where you keep data safe? So that's the way I would think about those in two different buckets. I would say that if your employer, if they're either, maybe ChatGPT Enterprise or Copilot, that's essentially what you wanna
Yeah.
use. I will say one thing you can do, and you can consider, you can, um, anonymize data. You don't
Mm.
have to put into, if you prefer Claude because of the writing content, you don't have to specifically say Acme Company specifically.
Mm.
You can just say, if I had a scenario where I'm this company, and you can still take advantage of those platforms. But those are the things that I would, consider what I'm putting into it in two different categories. And then as an individual, maybe, looking at your settings, are you sharing your information? Is it worth paying additional to get more safeguards?
Were you ever nervous at all? Like when you started using AI, were you nervous about? Because I kind of have a follow-up question. So when they say trust, and I guess I should have asked the question, but do they mean trust in accuracy or trust in privacy?
Oh, see, I was thinking
Because she says for
privacy.
everyday use, so I'm like, I'm not really sure if she meant what can do the job, so I kinda took it both ways, right? So if in accuracy, I don't think there's an issue, right? Like, you can pick one of the big names,
Mhm,
and they're gonna give you something that you need to trust but verify. But in terms of, where you went with the privacy, I was thinking the same thing. I would say first, if it's personal use, that you can do the chat GPT, the business account
mhm,
where, your data is not being trained for the models. But I went ahead and I asked chat GPT what it thought. And it was actually very honest, right? It didn't say only use me. It
mhm,
was actually very honest. It said in terms of privacy, Claude does not use your data to train the models by default.
okay,
Whereas in other AI providers, you have to ask it not to do that. And so we spoke earlier about how Claude is being, the safety, and they're
mhm,
really ethically trying to protect their users. So ChatGPT even said, if you're worried about privacy, go with Claude. As Kiana said, ChatGPT said, I'm the one you need to pick if you're an enterprise. If
mhm,
you're a big company, if you have, client data, and I think that's a differentiator between, am I just trying to protect my data or am I trying to protect other people's data as well? So
mhm,
then you need to go enterprise with ChatGPT. Perplexity is really at a middle ground. Uh, it hasn't really taken a stance on protecting your data, but what it's saying is that Perplexity is more concerned with retrieval than storing your data, right? Because they're constantly going out and getting data. And then, unless they want to become the next Google, all that would really be important to them is what are people searching for, not
mhm,
necessarily what did I bring back,
okay,
because I'm bringing everybody
mhm.
all sorts of readily available information. And ChatGPT said that Gemini is dead last if you're worried about privacy, because Google's whole point is to store your data and know what you're doing. So I was like, yeah, not a bad list.
So yeah, not a bad list at all. One thing I would say, in terms of Chat GPT for individuals, looking to use Chat GPT, Chat GPT does have the business account, which essentially equates to almost $20 a month. And that's a private, it's secure in terms of it's not training the model. It's just your data, so it's very similar to what you would experience from a corporate enterprise account,
Mm.
but from a cost savings, it equates to closely, $20 a month when you pay it in one lump sum, so that's just an option too.
So in summary, I guess we're saying we trust AI, but we make sure our settings and everything are set to where anything that we really need to keep private, it will be protected.
Yeah, I think in this day and age, I mean, we have to expect that Big Brother, at least for me, I think Big Brother is listening. I mean, we've all had examples of you're talking about going on vacation, you're talking about a particular city, and then the next thing you know, you're
The
getting
ads.
the ads start.
Yeah.
Even, I have to wonder sometimes about Alexa at home.
Mm.
I'm talking about something, and then the next thing I know, I've got ads on Alexa mention making blueberry muffins, and then the next thing I know, I've got a pop-up that blueberries are on sale. So,
Wow.
Big Brother is there, I think is just, understanding and being cautious. Alright, so switching gears, talking about what's been going on in the lab and some of the tools we love or tools we think you can leave. So in our lightning round, love it or leave it section. Let's kick off with first one is replacing traditional internship with AI simulated project portfolios. So essentially what this is using AI tools to build a portfolio of simulated work instead of actually doing a traditional internship. Love it or leave it.
Absolutely love. I don't think you have a choice. So I think everybody should be going to AI and asking, what kind of work should I be familiar with if I'm going into insert role? I love it.
I agree. I mean, in terms of building a portfolio, if you can work with AI to save yourself 3 months of a unpaid, not every individual can go 3 months without pay. If you're able to build an AI portfolio, you should take advantage of that.
Mhm.
But playing devil's advocate, what about the relationship building aspect of a traditional internship?
Yeah, you can't fake that. So you're gonna have to go work at Chick-fil-A, right? Like you're gonna have to go somewhere else that you wouldn't really want to work to get the relationship piece.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't prompt your way to a mentor.
No.
All right. So we would say replacing traditional internships with AI projected portfolios is a love it. All right. Next is deep fake voice tools for delegating your phone calls. Essentially, what this is using a clone version of your voice to handle calls, RSVPs, just routine conversations on your behalf. Love it or leave it.
Imma leave. It's in the ick zone. It gives me the ick. I'm a fan of if you're gonna have an AI assistant, have an AI use a different voice,
Mm,
but don't
that's a
pretend like it's you. Like, that gives me issue.
Yeah, it was the same, and not because of it's the same for me, it's a leave it, but not because of the technology, like, I agree with you, like, the technology is there, take advantage of the technology, maybe
Mhm.
in a different voice. I think for what you say, it's just not worth the consent. I would hate for individuals to think that they were, actually speaking with me, so, maybe if the parties know that, it's your AI, if they know that it's maybe not you, but if not, to me, it's awkward. I'd hate to, meet with the client and they realize that they weren't actually speaking to me or maybe in a job interview. Could you imagine? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it could definitely backfire. I was watching something and the guy had created a um a phone assistant for himself. And then when he went to meet with the client, they said, "Oh, your assistant Sarah was so nice. She did this, she did that." To me, I think that's okay because it wasn't him.
right.
It was like,
It
"Oh,
was
yeah,
his
you spoke
assistant.
with Sarah.
Okay.
Okay, cool." Like, nobody said Sarah was real. But I
Hmm.
think to, yeah, present it as if it's you, I don't like it.
Leave it. Agreed. All right. So moving on, we've got AI video tools. So this would be AI tools like VO, Kling, Hitsfield. So essentially replacing traditional editing for like YouTube content to shoot and upload. So essentially what this would do, these particular platforms, they handle the editing. So creators mostly just have to shoot and upload. It's going through and doing all of the editing for the most part. What's your thoughts there?
I would say leave, to be honest with I like the idea.
Oh, really?
I like the idea, but none of them seem to work.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And it's almost one of those things where you gotta go back and the re-editing is so much more time intensive. I could have just done it. So I like the idea. I just think it needs work
So the application, is where
because they don't understand your intent.
Mhm.
And so even when you're working with a human editor, they have to understand your intent to understand what how to fit the pieces of the puzzle together. I mean, where I've seen this work is where people just start with a prompt and it's just completely AI generated. I mean, I feel like that's a more successful use of AI for editing. But we'll
Okay.
see.
Alright, we'll see. The next one is always on AI meeting co-pilots that auto join every Zoom and transcription meeting. So this is leaving the AI assistant, they're always on every call automatically. What are your thoughts there without being manually activated?
At work, love. At home, leave. At home or any personal calls, you need the option.
I would agree. Yeah, the always on, I think it takes a productivity tool and puts on a surveillance hat.
Mm.
So, consent, I think is critical here. So I would say love it when people know.
Push it all the way up to the top so I can see.
So that's all we have for the couch today.
Yeah, if you got a question, if you got a hot take, if you got a story that you want us to put it on the couch next week, go ahead and drop it in the comments for us. As I mentioned earlier, the link is in the description for the ASAP, the AI Simple Action Plan that we do for every single episode. So you can take all of the ideas that we gave you, and you actually have a full list of things you can go put into place. And when you grab that, you'll be invited to our AI office hours where you can ask questions. It's a private call, it's a safe space where we can all build together and really take this AI thing to the next level. Be sure to like and subscribe for the algorithm. I'm Jerry.
And I'm Kiana, and this is the Prompt Life Podcast.